Rampage! One of my favorite nostalgic series as a kid, and kinda a gateway drug into the world of giant monsters. Yeah, you'd think Godzilla would be my obvious first foray into the genre, but no. I first played Rampage at some kid's house on the Sega Master System, no less, and I distinctly remember thinking, oh, this is like about King Godzilla Dong or something. I hadn't seen any of the movies the game took obvious inspiration from at that point because I was like 8. All I knew was that it was fun. Giant monsters, who couldn't love that? Now, with Rampage making its silver screen debut, I thought it would be fun to do a mini retrospective for the actually pretty prolific series, which had a lot more releases than most people probably realize. So grab a Scumm Soda and join me, George, Lizzie, and Ralph, and way more others than necessary as we wreck through the Rampage games. The first title released in arcades in 1986 by Midway and was designed by Brian Collin and Jeff Noman and proved to be an absolute monster in the arcades. A smashing success for the company. A towering giant amongst his peers. Okay, I'll stop. But it legit proved to be a quarter muncher for Midway alongside its other successes at the time, like Spy Hunter and arch rivals. So with that, Rampage found its way onto every console imaginable at the time, with notable ports on the NES, the aforementioned Master System, the Atari 2600 and 5200, and even a curious version that released late onto the illest fated of portables, the Atari Lynx, which oddly enough included a fourth playable monster, Larry the Rat. Huh, neat. Like I said, I first played the Master System version, which was a fairly accurate port of the arcade original, with the NES version obviously coming up incredibly short in this regard. Still though, this is the version I could play the most since I own an NES and rented it all the fucking time. I remember staring at the glorious box art at my local rental store like a lot. I even tried drawing it a bunch of times. I have the rosiest of rose-tinted glasses for Rampage NES, despite it being a less than stellar port. The graphics obviously took a big hit. 3 players was not possible, but worst of all, choosing between 3 monsters was even less possible, since this version axed Ralph completely. Now, I prefer both George and Lizzie to the furry guy, but it sucks he was left out for whatever reason. The story is almost non-existent as well, as it takes a wreck things to take your anger out on the world sort of tact, and doesn't go into the reasons why 3 tiny naked humans were turned into kaiju. It was designed to be an arcade game and did exactly that very well. Plunk in some cash, smash some shit, and just walk away. It fared less well on consoles because its literal hundreds of levels got old after extended play sessions. Still though, Rampage NES, precious memories. Now let's fast forward a number of years to the magical time period of 1997. Midway had changed considerably in the 90s as Mortal Kombat and violent game fare in general was in vogue, and they still occasionally dipped into their back catalog to bring some old classics out. Fortunately, Rampage was among them. World Tour was a sequel reboot of sorts, which was developed by the original's designers and surprisingly stuck to its 2D roots in the age of 3D taking the video game industry by storm. Although, in the arcades, 3D was a bit slower to catch on. World Tour did adopt a rendered look for most of its characters, and even more cartoony art style was used where everything just got turned up to 11 in the wacky department. There's a sexy scientist lady. I assume she's a sexy scientist because who else would own a science coat like that? I did play the N64 version a lot at sleepovers, since it could now support up to 3 players, which was always good fun, and I distinctly remember destroying the levels as fast as possible would always give way to smacking each other around a bunch. Midway unfortunately did not bring this game to the home with any meaningful changes that facilitated non-arcade play. There were no extra minigames or modes or anything, so it was a very bare-bones port, and what they did add was, no challenge. Yeah, in lieu of quarters, you now have unlimited lives. Once your cool monster eats shit and turns into a gross human, just press that big red start button and you'll just keep playing forever. This sounds fine because it basically lets you complete the game at your leisure, but again, with over 100 levels, that required more patience than I had when I was 15, and more patience than I have now. But it's an arcade port, how could I really complain? And oddly enough, despite all these flaws, World Tour did phenomenally well on consoles, and Midway transitioned the series into being a console exclusive. No more arcades. Rampage 2 Universal Tour released in 1999, this time under the developer of Avalanche Software. A Flophouse favorite dev, as they're responsible for the port of Prince of Persia 3D, 25 to Life, and DBZ Saga. So there's definitely a different feel here. The game doesn't play as fast or as loose as the original World Tour, and has a darker and less saturated color palette that I don't think really works. It plays a bit differently too. As you destroy shit, you power up a special move meter that's unique to each monster, which really lets you cause some havoc. Honestly, it plays fine, but it's barely an upgrade over its predecessor. The sequel did add a couple of weirdo monsters that are initially the replacements for our 3 original Leviathans, and you choose which one of the OGs to bust out of monster jail. There's a mouse, Dr. Zoidberg, and Rambi. Sure. Level progression is about the same. You just need to decide who to save first, and they are thankfully added to your roster once you save them. This doesn't really, though, improve or change anything, except maybe it pushes you to play harder and faster because you just want the original trio as soon as possible, due to the new monsters basically being jars of hot mayonnaise. Like, ew, no. Once you've got your full monster squad together, you can then lay waste to the universe at large and fight some alien goofballs, and the cosmic ballet goes on. So, that's the basic gist of the Rampage game. So, thanks for... wait, there's more. In 2000, 1 year later, Rampage Through Time was released as a PlayStation exclusive, and I don't think that many people out there remember this one. It features a few new monsters like a lame warthog and cyclops things, and I think they were not all that necessary. I guess they felt they needed to, but if all the characters play almost exactly the same, what's the point? Maybe make a blob-like enemy that can stick to surfaces, or more flying types. I don't know, I'm just spitballing here. You then travel to the past, as the title kind of infers, because of several reasons I don't even care to know, and the backgrounds change. That's it. They did attempt to change up the formula a little bit by having 3 city stages followed by a competitive minigame between the monsters that's just okay. The graphics look even worse this time around, and in the year 2000, 1 year before MGS2 comes out, this just wasn't cutting it. Rampage would then go on an extended hiatus, and Avalanche Software would be out of the picture. Thank God, because I don't think I could take another glacially paced, unfunny news segment intro a third time.
Good evening. In tonight's top story... Okay... In tonight's top story, the capstone of the Empire State Building was set today. Reconstruction of the world's major cities has now been completed.
I think they carried that torch of having to make basic bitch Rampage games into the new millennium long enough. But that extended hiatus would be cut short because a year later, Rampage Puzzle Attack was released for the GBA in 2001. I didn't even know about this until I decided to make this video, and it was brought to us by Nanai Games, a Finnish developer best known for Rampage Puzzle Attack. Seriously, that's the only thing they ever did. So why did Midway decide that an arcade action game featuring giant monsters needed a puzzle spin-off? Because fuck you. As for the game itself, it's an average puzzle game. So then, in 2006, kaiju started thundering back into the video game industry in lots of little ways, most notably with the Godzilla fighting games by Pipeworks and, of course, War of the Monsters on the PS2. It was then that Midway decided to pull George, Lizzie, and Ralph out of retirement for a third time with Rampage Total Destruction, which is probably one of the most crushing disappointments for a comeback I can think of right now. Coming to us from Pipeworks, this seemed like a slam dunk. Give a new 3D Rampage to the folks that cut their teeth on the successful Godzilla games? How could it go wrong? Let's find out. Now, as a package, I'm going to be upfront here. Total Destruction is a Rampage fan's dream, as it also comes with arcade-perfect ports of the 1986 original, as well as World Tour. So you are getting 3 games in one here. That's a good deal. The game visually looks great, and there's a lot of new stuff going on, considering the fact that there's now like 483 monster characters. Like, I'm not even shitting you. Well, I am, but there's a lot more than you need. I will admit, there are some cool little guys in there, like Marco the Shark, but man, I wish they had just cut down on the characters and maybe focused on other stuff, like the gameplay. That gameplay. For my money, and this is sad to say, this is the worst controlling Rampage by far, like the size of George's hairy dick. I can't think of any games that are this awkward to do the most basic shit in. It's a weird 2D, 3D hybrid, and not in the cool Klonoa way, but in the bad Rampage Total Destruction way. Grappling onto buildings takes about 3 seconds to start up. You can also bumble your way onto the front of buildings to smash them, making the process feel a lot slower than it should be. You have a variety of attacks, but also kind of like too many again, like more than you need. The attacks themselves have long, exaggerated animations, and it just doesn't feel like a quick, snappy arcade experience like every game before it did. You now have like this little tiny 3D space to explore where it's not all that interesting, and it just has multiple buildings on different 3D planes. The game doesn't know what it wants to be at all, and just feels like a bunch of ideas thrown together without a lot of cohesive design. Also, for reasons I can't understand, Midway decided to release this on the PS2 and the GameCube in 2006. The year where the PS3 and the Wii had been out for months. There was no Xbox version, 360 or otherwise, and what's more, they did release a Wii version just a few months after that featured more monsters, levels, and controlled far, far worse. Yes, it's a worse version of the game. This, again, is that magical time where Midway was hilariously good at making big, dumb, hilarious mistakes. Now, where does that leave us? For the last 12 years, there's been little to no news on the Rampage front, but I guess Warner Brothers picked up the license for the franchise when Midway was selling franchises out of the back of their car back in 2009. Instead of making a game out of it, however, they decided to make a movie, and then make a game based on the movie. Yes, there is a brand new Rampage game out right now, exclusively at Dave & Buster's. I got a chance to play it recently with Liam Chan while we were in Boston for PAX East, and it's okay. It looks the part using the movie designs and plays very fast, as you simply need to smash buildings with one big red button and everyone just fucking super jumps to the next block and recommence the destruction. You are supposed to be collecting canisters to evolve your monster and get bigger, but it's hard to keep playing as it's intended to be one of those more exploitative ticket machine things, so gameplay is kind of secondary to taking money away from you. Still though, it was nice to see the game even existing, and if it got retooled slightly and sold on digital stores for a small price, I might be tempted to buy that, especially if they had unlockable skins that harken back to their 1986 roots. We'll see how the movie performs at the box office, and maybe WB might revisit again down the road. Time will tell. So there you actually have it. Rampage is a series near and dear to my heart, and while I don't absolutely adore any one game in the franchise, I still love it as a concept and hope it somehow finds a way to exist in the years to come. Next up, I'll be reviewing the Rampage movie itself. Fingers crossed it's just a big, dumb, entertaining popcorn flick and not some huge, monstrous train wreck. Oh, okay, I'll stop.